Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video, we're going to talk about the New York Mets and review their season. Now, I had done New York Mets content earlier this year on the channel, and pretty much if you're a viewer from the channel, you know that at some point had to stop because I was called back into work for pretty much the whole summer, and that's pretty much why things kind of ended on those videos amongst other videos. But now that I'm back to doing content, I figured, let me wait till the season's over. Let's review the season, and then we'll cover the playoffs from there. So overall, I think the Mets had a fantastic season. This is the third time they've won 100 or more games in their history. So they won, obviously, 108 in 1986. I believe they won 188. And now they've won 101 games. Now, obviously, you know, if you take the "what have you done for me lately" attitude, the Mets didn't end well. September was not very good for them. Obviously, the sweep in Atlanta was horrendous. It's the worst time to not carve out one game, and they had their best two pitchers out there. But be that as it may, that's how baseball is, you know. One of the things I mentioned earlier in the season is that because the Mets were playing so well last time I was doing these series of videos, is that you're going to get to a point where things drag. You know, every team has it. It happens at different points in the season. Unfortunately, in the Mets history, it seems to always happen towards the end. I mean, we've had many times where they've been beaten out for a playoff spot, beaten out for the division. So this is just, unfortunately, historically par for the course. But with that said, the playoffs are a whole new season, and we've had plenty of times in the past where the Mets have turned it on in the playoffs. You know, you take 2015 when they swept the Cubs, you know, but that season the Cubs beat them up pretty good. A lot of teams, things just change in the playoffs. The 88 Dodgers, for example, this was a season where the Mets beat the Dodgers 11 games out of 12 during the season, but in the postseason, the Dodgers beat them in the playoffs. So anything can happen in the playoffs. Now, with that said, let's go over the season first, and then we'll talk about tomorrow night's game and the playoff match against San Diego. So overall, I think if I had to choose a team MVP, it's got to be Pete Alonso, in my opinion. It's a toss-up between him and Starling Marte. Obviously, you can name Max Scherzer. I mean, even though he was injured a couple of times, I mean, he obviously had a solid season. But I got to go with Alonso. I just saw, you know, I've been watching the Mets since '83, since I was a little boy, almost 40 years now. And, you know, so I've seen Pete from the time he came up. His rookie year, hit 53 home runs. And I think this season he's become a better overall hitter than he was in any prior year. Just so clutch for the most part throughout the season. When he did slump, it didn't really last long. I was even wondering if he was going to get to 40 home runs. There was a time there where he was hitting fine and he was driving in runs. He just wasn't popping homers. And he still ended up with 40 home runs. This guy has put the Mets on his back this year. He's been 131 RBIs, which is a Mets record. The only Met to hit 40 or more home runs in more than one season. And obviously the Mets record for most home runs in the season was 53. So Pete Alonso has just steadily gotten better, which is insane to me. You know, he's not just an all or nothing hitter. You know, he can hit doubles. He's a good situational hitter. I mean, he's never going to hit, I don't think he'll ever really hit 300, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's a season where he just goes off and hits like 301 and hits like another 50 home runs and drives in another 120 plus RBIs. He just has that kind of talent. So I would say MVP for me personally is definitely Pete Alonso. He's been clutch all season, and I'm hoping that he's one of those players that hits the zone in the playoffs and just goes nuts, kind of like Daniel Murphy did. I have to give credit to Lindor for a big comeback. 26 home runs, 107 RBIs, batting almost 280. I mean, not so many shortstops are going to put up that number. Stellar defense. Lindor, you know, another player that can only get better. And there was a great comeback season for him. Jeff McNeil winning the batting title. I mean, you go up and down this lineup, and this lineup can hit. It doesn't look that way. The last month, they've been an all or nothing team. They either score a bunch of runs and beat the hell out of you, or they were getting hammered. We hardly saw Edwin Diaz at all in September. It was insane. So, but I think overall, it was a successful season. It didn't end the way you wanted it to, but you're still in the show. You're still in the playoffs, and you still have an opportunity to go out there and win a championship. And I think at the end of the day, any team will tell you they'll take a championship over a division any day of the week. So, but the division would have been nice, obviously, and we'll get into that in a moment. I think Buck Showalter, I don't know if he'll win Manager of the Year, but he definitely has to be considered for Manager of the Year. He's done a wonderful job. He's always been a good manager. Every team he's ever touched, he's made them competitive. He's gotten them to the playoffs, to the postseason. But he also has a monkey on that he has to get off his back, which is being successful in the playoffs. And I'm hoping that now he'll kind of break that mold. So Scherzer and DeGrom, I'm expecting them to turn it on in the playoffs, especially Scherzer. But they took a beating in Atlanta. I mean, DeGrom, we say he took a beating. 3 runs, 6 innings, 11 strikeouts is a good line for any pitcher. But we're so used to seeing DeGrom dominate and shut down the lineup that you look at that and that's a horrible start. Now, he didn't look crisp. He didn't look very good, but it wasn't a horrible performance. Scherzer, on the other hand, did not look good. 4 runs, 5 innings in that start in Atlanta. So, there's always concerns, but like, again, you reset. This is the playoffs. You go in and things change. So now, in terms of the playoff matchup, this is not the matchup I wanted at all. I actually ended doing videos for the Mets during that West Coast trip where they got beat up by the Padres. I remember really talking about and emphasizing that West Coast trip as a good indication of where the Mets are. They had split against the Dodgers. They lost 2 out of 3 against San Diego, and they won 2 out of 3 in Los Angeles against the Angels. And the Mets historically, even with the good teams, have always kind of struggled on the West Coast trips. Not every year, but West Coast trips have been a nightmare for this team traditionally. So I felt coming out of that West Coast trip that they did okay. They did solid. I mean, at that time, they did not have Scherzer and they did not have DeGrom. So now things are a little bit different. Now they're facing the Padres. Scherzer's back, DeGrom's back, but the Padres have an insane lineup that scares me because they really haven't woken up yet. That lineup is underperforming, and that's kind of what scares me. Not to mention, Yu Darvish is starting tomorrow night, and he has destroyed the Mets. So there's a lot of things kind of weighing against them. Again, this is not a team I wanted to face in the playoffs. So the Padres are quietly a dangerous team in the play. They have not only Yu Darvish, they got Musgrove, Snell's pitching better. Hader's been pitching a little bit better, and they got him in the bullpen. And then that lineup, Juan Soto, Manny Machado. I mean, they don't even have Fernando Tatis in there. Can you imagine? They got Bell. I mean, they just have. It's going to be a tough series. I'm expecting it to go the whole 3 games. Unfortunately, I don't see the Mets beating Darvish on Friday. Even if Max Scherzer pitches a solid 7 innings and gives up 1 run, Darvish he just takes the Mets out of whack. But again, playoffs change. Pressure changes people. Some people thrive under pressure, some people don't. And, some people would argue that the Mets don't thrive under pressure because of how they choked in Atlanta. But I don't think we can take one series and define a club with one 3-game series. They were bound. The Braves have been playing out of their. Imagine the Braves had to play 700 plus baseball just to catch the Mets, and even then, they didn't even beat them by a game. They still ended up tied. Obviously, the Braves had the tiebreaker. They had to play an insane winning baseball just to get the division, and they barely got it. And you kind of wonder if that's going to wear off in the playoffs. I don't know. Right now, the Braves look like the best team. I mean, it hurts me to say that as a Met fan who's been dealing with the Braves forever. I mean, I have lived through the 90s of the Braves while the Mets were garbage. The late 90s when the Mets were better, but they still couldn't beat the Braves. You know, in the mid 2000s, the Braves weren't very good, but then neither were the Mets. It was the Washington Nationals. Early 2000s, the Marlins beat the Yankees in the World Series. So the Phillies had that insane run, and they always beat the Mets. You know, there was that year that the Mets went to the playoffs. They got eliminated by the Cardinals. The following year, the Phillies bounced them out. So believe me, I have had my share of, and now it's the Braves again. Now the Mets are good, but the Braves are good too, or somewhat better, and they're younger, which is even worse. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the Mets have some young players, but overall their team is much older than the Braves. The Braves have essentially rookies playing on that team. You know, Michael Harris, right? Vaughn Grisham, who he slowed down quite a bit since he's come up, but still, I mean, that's another young player. Swanson. I mean, these guys are all young. So, you know, right now the Braves look like, even with the Dodgers winning 111 games, the Braves look like the best team in National League. But that doesn't mean they're unbeatable. That doesn't mean the Mets are out of chance of winning the championship. But it's going to be a tough road, because even if they beat the Padres, then they got to deal with the Dodgers. Now, believe it or not, the Dodgers don't scare me nearly as much as the Padres. I just feel like the Padres are just not a good match for the Mets. The Mets just did not perform well against them at San Diego and at home, and they didn't even have the lineup they have now. And yes, we do have Scherzer and DeGrom back. So if you put those two guys on top of their game, then I still believe the Mets will win 2 out of 3, but I think it's going to be a full 3-game series. I'm hearing that Showalter is considering holding back on DeGrom to see if he'll need him for an elimination game, or if he can hold him off until, the Dodgers come. I think that's a little foolish to be thinking ahead like that. I would send out both of them back to back and just nail this down and start with Chris Bassett in Los Angeles. But, that's what he's going to do. So my prediction for the series is a very tough win for the Mets, 2 out of 3. But I can't say that with 100% confidence, because the Padres, they just have one of those teams that look like they're going to pop off. Like, that lineup, if it starts hitting now, I don't know too many pitching staffs that can hold it off, including the Mets. But let's just hope they stay asleep. Let's hope that Scherzer and DeGrom are at their A game, and the Mets have to hit. Bottom line is, they have to hit. I disagree with a lot of people who think that the home run ball is 100% necessary in the playoffs. I really believe that it is, because the pitching is so good. You do have to get to a point where because if you go cold hitting home runs, you're done. You're done in the playoffs, no matter what. Like, the Braves are great and everything, but if they don't hit home runs in the playoffs, they're gone. The Mets, that's not necessarily true. They don't need the home run ball to win. They've proven that. And they're very good at manufacturing runs. So I think that gives the Mets a bit of an unrecognized edge. A lot of people just kind of saying it has to be the home run. Yes, there have been big home runs in baseball in the playoffs, and last year the Braves hit a ton of home runs against the Houston Astros. But the thing about having an offense that relies on home runs is that if you're cold, you're essentially done for. Where if you have an all-around balanced offense where you can hit home runs here and there, but you still can hit a lot of singles and doubles, rallies last longer with those kind of hits. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. We'll be back on early Saturday or maybe tomorrow night after the game. Depends how late it finishes. And we'll definitely look over and review each game. And hopefully I can be doing these videos for at least a couple of weeks. And hopefully the Mets don't get eliminated this weekend. But overall, I'm very happy with the season. And it's great to see them in the playoffs. I'm super excited. And I hope they make a deep run. That's all I can ask for. I don't expect them to win the World Series. That's a tall order with some of the competition. The National League overall, I think Houston is the best team. It's up there with the Dodgers and the Braves, but I think the National League is stacked. I mean, you got the Cardinals are just really good too, the Braves, the Dodgers, and the Mets, and the 2 wildcard teams are nothing to sneeze at. The Phillies, can hit you out of elimination or hit you into elimination with their home run bats. And the Padres, to me, are like a sleeping giant that I hope just stays asleep till next year. So, but anyway, that's it for this video. For you Met fans who are here, I know there's not many. There's a lot of more Kaiju fans in this channel, but I love my team. I love to talk about them. So any Met fans that I can see in the comment section would be great. But until tomorrow night, this is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.